and talking about baby names for the future. Right. Juliana, in turn, also writing, you know, how much she needed him. And
February 24th, 2023, he said they weren't even together. So it seems like there's a lot of confusion. They're trying to push forward about what their relationship was. But one thing is clear, they were saying, I love you in letters, and Juliana moved back into that home, but also into the master bedroom of the home just months after Christine had been killed. And also remember Joseph Ryan as well. The whole plan, according to prosecutors, was to pin this on Joseph Ryan, a man they lured to the home off a sexual fetish website.
Yeah, I know we have some other moments from inside the courtroom. Right. Do we have any moment from John Carroll?
We do. And so we have a clip of John Carroll kind of closing out his arguments. If we can we take a listen to that? Do we have that clip? Okay, it looks like we don't have that.
I don't have another opportunity to talk to you. It's their burden to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt, so they get the opportunity to speak. So I apologize if I've gone too long, but I wanted to make sure that these important issues came before you. And might leave you with these words. When they lie and manipulate to get someone to make a statement, that's not discovering the truth. That's planting the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patience. And at the end of your deliberations, I ask that you find my client guilty of all charges.
So you hear John Carroll there, who is Brendan's attorney, saying, you know, that the prosecutors rushed to judgment, they ignored evidence, manipulated, he used the word manipulated, Juliana Magalhaes to get her to testify against Brendan, when really she was a part of this as well, you know, referring to those letters that prove that she was part of this plan.
And I think John Carroll was also trying to bring it back to the fact that originally Juliana had a different story. She had a story that more aligned with what Brendan Banfield testified to. But I thought what was also important, to see a lot of comments already, people talking about how they felt like John Carroll's closing argument may have not been that exciting. They were not happy with some of his questioning. But you heard that
90 minutes.
You heard that mention, though. He says, I'm sorry. And, you know, I think it's interesting because Frank Salvato, I had asked him last week, you know, do you think John Carroll is walking a line of annoying the jurors? We know some of the jurors were yawning at points. Others were very intently listening and taking notes. And he said, you know, I think what we'll see at the end is John Carroll will get up there and he'll say, I'm sorry if I took your time in any capacity or bothered you, but this was my job. And we saw that unfold.
And we did see that unfold. You know, I think that we saw the same style play out in their closing arguments that we saw from both attorneys in the beginning of this trial. Jenna Sands, the prosecutor, came out with shots fired, no pun intended, but, you know, just a pistol, really getting straight to the point, making things very clear, very punchy. And you saw John Carroll's style a little bit more subdued and a little more thoughtful, as in his, you know, explanation was a little long-winded and really thorough. And I think that really speaks to his job. You know, he is saying that the Fairfax County Police Department did not do a thorough investigation for his client. So you see the different styles for sure. Jenna Sands, her closing argument was about 30 minutes, if that, versus John Carroll, 90 minutes. But we kind of expected that going into it, right?
But I think they're also different personalities, right? Like you can tell John Carroll is just a different personality than Jenna Sands. So I think they have different styles. And, you know, the jurors, from what Matthew Torres was telling us on Friday, some of them are very interested in what he's saying. And while, you know, some of our viewers might be wanting those moments of, you know, craziness and chaos, there's a lot of facts, there's a lot of science here, and he has to get through all of that evidence to defend his client properly. You know, people are just pouring through the comments. So we appreciate everyone who's watching. We will have a criminal defense attorney here with us around 10:30 to take your questions. So please, if you have questions, you can send them to us. You can text them to us. That number's on your screen, 202-895-5599. We will get to as many of those questions as we can, and with our legal expert around 10:30 this morning.
And just to kind of give, you know, our viewers a little sentiment of what people are commenting, I think it's, you know, a mixed bag. Some people are saying it was a very weak close for the state. Someone saying the defense closing put me to sleep, watched it on 3 times speed. Another person weighing in that they too thought the state had not a very strong case in the end. So I think that, you know, how it was received was different, and it's ultimately in the hands of the jury members. But, you know, just to kind of go over Brendan Banfield's charges here, he's now facing 2 counts of aggravated murder, a firearms charge, and a count of child endangerment. Again, facing life in prison if convicted. There it is on your screen right there, laid out. And as Frank mentioned, that this is a all or nothing deal. So he will be found guilty of all of this, and Frank sort of put it as it's a package deal, right? Yeah. It's all or nothing. Right. So he will be found guilty of all of these charges and facing life in prison if convicted. And just to point out, in Virginia, obviously this is out of Fairfax County, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam back in 2021 did abolish the death penalty in the state of Virginia. So yeah, he is facing life in prison without parole.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people asking that question, and we talked about that with Frank as well. But yeah, this is not a death penalty case. I will mention, I saw there that the charges, they're aggravated murder within 3 years. The second charge is aggravated murder, same act transaction. So one is that the 2 murders were committed within that 3-year time span. The other is that they were under the same act or transaction. And I think it's also important to mention here that the waterfall instructions, no waterfall, right? So
explain what that is.
Right. So either Brendan is found guilty of killing both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan, or neither. They can't say he killed one and not the other. It's both, which is why I think Jenna Sands, her closing argument was so important. Annie, why don't we go back to the very beginning? Take a look at the opening statement we heard from both of these attorneys, just to show the comparison of how they closed out and how they started. All right. We are still working to get you that, but we'll get back to that. And that's the opening statements from both attorneys. You know, I thought what was interesting, though, about that is that both of the attorneys, they did their opening statements in less than 30 minutes total, whereas here we saw it take much longer.
Yeah, we did. And, you know, I mean, it was pretty clear as far as what each one was arguing. And again, the jury had weekend to really think about it. Of course, they could not deliberate together, but I mean, they went home with a lot. Yeah. A very cluttered mind of evidence and testimony, closing argument, and things like that. Defense John Carroll telling the jurors that Brendan acted in self-defense after finding his wife being attacked, and that the prosecutors, the goal of arresting Juliana was to flip her against Brendan, her ex-lover, and the letters that she, you know, that she shared with him showed that they were in love and was involved. Prosecutors, meanwhile, say evidence is very clear here. Brendan set this entire thing up and deliberately and willfully carried this out so that he could run away with Juliana, the au pair, and start a new life together.
And I think the phrasing that Juliana used when she was up there on the stand was that divorce was not an option for him. You know, let's talk though back.
And reminding viewers, divorce wasn't an option for Brendan because according to Juliana, that meant shared custody or
and
that
money.
Money, right? Of their then 4-year-old daughter.
Yeah. It does look like we may have that clip for you of the opening statements. Are we able to play that? These are the opening statements. Just let us know if we're able to play that or we can move on. Okay, so let's take a listen to that.
Brendan Banfield, Mr. Banfield's present, courtroom with his attorney, and the Commonwealth is present.
We're here today because Brendan Banfield, the man seated behind me, killed his wife, Christine Banfield, and another man named Joseph Ryan.
The murder of Christine Banfield by Joe Ryan occurred on February 24th, 2023.
They sneak up the stairs to the bedroom where they hear Joe Ryan and Christine. Brendan enters the bedroom first, shooting Joe in the head, picks up the knife that Joe had brought, and stabs Christine repeatedly in the neck. He directs Juliana to shoot Joe a second time with her gun. Brendan spends the next several minutes manipulating Joe Ryan's body, in the process leaving Christine's blood on Joe's hands and pants.
The arrest of Juliana Perez took place in October of 2023. And the whole reason she was arrested was to flip her against the client. You won't hear any dispute as to the relationship between Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez-Magalhaes. There's an awful lot more to look for, ladies and
The
gentlemen.
blood puts Brendan Banfield standing over Christine, stabbing her in the neck until she died. Well, Juliana presents us with the narrative. It is the blood evidence that you can rely upon without.
Digital forensics doesn't lie. People lie. And there are going to be plenty to see.
Okay, so what you heard, obviously, John Carroll saying forensics don't lie, people don't lie. We saw that kind of throughout his case here, right? We heard him trying to prove that throughout the entire case. And when he says people lie, he's talking about Juliana. He's specifically saying to the jurors, don't trust her. And we heard him kind of re-echo that at the end. With the prosecution, though, she said, trust the blood science that we've presented you, the blood evidence. Juliana is the bonus. So they're both kind of playing off of Juliana's testimony in different ways. The prosecution saying, you know, she was there, she's a witness. If you don't trust her, okay, but we still have all this evidence. Where John Carroll is saying, all of their evidence is Juliana and you can't trust her. So interesting, right?
And let's talk about some of that evidence because we spent a lot of time on the digital evidence and also the blood stain evidence. And I think the conclusion was regarding the blood stain, John Carroll is saying the blood on the gun was not tested.
Right. And also the blood on Brendan Banfield's hands, right? You know, I know we have some body camera footage that maybe we can play part of it while we're talking about this, but there's body camera footage showing Brendan Banfield inside of the hospital. And so you see it right there. You see Brendan, he's there on the hospital bed. And this is really the moment he's finding out. Yeah, you can hear it right there. He's finding out the moment his wife died. And he's sitting there and you can't see it in this moment, but his hands are just covered in blood, Annie. And that was a big talking point for the defense. They're saying, you allowed my client to wash his hands. And that's bringing up 2 points, right? He's saying, you have no proof that that blood on my client's hands was not Christine's, or it was Christine's. You know, Brendan says it was Christine's because he said he was trying to render aid to his wife. But at the same time, you have this moment where he's saying, did the Fairfax County Police Department mess up the investigation by letting him wash his hands? And if they did it here, how many other times did they mess up the investigation?
Right. And we also heard from the officer who accompanied Brendan to the hospital.
Both of those officers, yeah.
Both of those officers. And they were questioned about allowing him to wash his hands that day. And
you heard the one officer, when he was asked, why did you let him? He said, I felt bad for him, right?
He just lost his wife. Right. He was going through all of this. So that was something that John Carroll had argued in, you know, basically saying that there was a lack of a thorough investigation. And that's really his priority, right, as the defense attorney, is not to really lay out exactly what happened, but to find and poke holes in the prosecutor's theory and dismantle the theory or just the investigation.
Yeah. And, you know, we also heard testimony from both Juliana Perez-Magalhaes and Brendan Banfield. We do have a clip of Juliana during her testimony. So we're going to play that for you right now if we can.
I need help. There is my friend. She just was stuck in the night now. She's bleeding a lot.
My name is Brendan Banfield. I'm a federal agent. This is my house. There's somebody here. I shot him.
What did you see when you went into the bedroom?
First glance, I saw a female that was nude. She was covered in blood with a gentleman standing over her with bloody hands.
Who is the shooter? Who shot who?
Brendan, he's an officer.
He first asked, does he have a pulse? He did follow up with, is she breathing? Or is she going to be okay? Is what he said.
What's going on this morning?
Brendan said, no, police don't drop the knife. And he was saying, I'm going to kill her, I'm going to kill her. And I don't know, he stabbed her. Brendan, I think Brendan shot him.
Initially, we walked outside, allowed the first ambulance to leave, and then Mr. Banfield was taken into a ambulance.
What, if anything, did you see him do while you were in the hospital room with him?
He washed his hands.
And before he washed his hands, had anyone swabbed his hands to preserve samples of blood that were on his hands?
No, I was trying to be empathetic.
Yes. No, I understand. Was there anybody who told you not to do that?
No, sir.
In this case, the penalty of law.
Yes.
Thank you. Now you can have a seat.
But I told the detectives that day, it was the version Brendan had told me. Brendan said he yelled, police officer, and she yelled back at Brendan saying, Brendan, he has a knife. That's when Brendan first shot Joe. He got on top of her, and that's when I first saw him stab her with a knife. And I just start telling him he's moving is behind you, and that's when I got the shot too.
Did you see him interacting with Joe or Christine after you shot Joe?
Well, he was still stabbed in Christine, and he got her blood, a handful of blood, and he starts dripping on Joe's body.
You asking the ladies and gentlemen of the jury to believe that you came out during that time frame because you wanted the truth to be known versus any time the year before that?
Well, the fact that I took a year to accept my plea, it does not mean that I didn't have any intention to tell the truth before. I had a video call with the producer who works with Netflix, and they want to make a movie or documentary about my case, and he explained in terms of compensation. So they were thinking about $10,000, but I want to negotiate. I want more than this.
You were charged with murder because you shot someone. Am I wrong?
No, you're not.
And so why would you deserve something because of that?
Not because of that. I didn't say that I deserve something because of what I did.
I didn't hear any detail, so feel free to tell me why.
I'm saying for after, when this is over, for me and my family. And again, for everything we've been through.
All right, so that was just some of Juliana's testimony, Annie. We know she was called back on the next day, and she was out there all day, and we saw there towards the end she was getting very frustrated with John Carroll and his line of questioning, but you know, he's doing up. He's trying to poke holes in her story, a story which we know has changed based on the body camera footage we've also seen.
Yeah, I want to visit this comment from one of our viewers here. First of all, thank you all for joining us again and really engaging with us. Barb says, I think the boss who said he didn't have a meeting was the last nail in the coffin. Right. Now, for those of you who may have missed it, or if you just need a little refresher here, day 2 of Brendan's testimony,
right, which was Thursday,
Jenna Sands, the prosecutor, mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, they had a witness, a rebuttal witness. And she said that, you know, after Brendan's first day of testimony, someone had reached out to them. They had specific information to counter what Brendan testified in his first day. And that person ended up being his former boss, T. Patrick Smith.
Yeah, and we have a clip. We have both the testimony from Brendan Banfield, what she's talking about, the moments where she says this person reached out and was like, hey, that's not right. But then we also have his testimony if you want to take a listen.
We do. But before we get to that, to set it up, Brendan had testified that the morning of the killing, he had a big special operation and his promotion was riding on this. Yeah. And that's how significant it was for him. It was a big piece of his testimony, right? Yeah. The reason for him getting up early, the reason why he took that route. He was out at McDonald's grabbing a bite to eat. And it was a very big piece of it. Now, T. Patrick Smith enters the chat, so to speak, and says, wait a minute, I don't know if that's true. It isn't true. I was your boss that day because he was stepping in, and he's saying, that's not true. Right. We didn't have a special operation that I'm aware of. So is the fight of T. Patrick Smith?
It's the full thing. So with Brendan talking as well.
The day was an important day for me at work as well. There was a important meeting for one of my cases. There was going to be a undercover operation for one of my cases. And we were meeting with the undercover officer, a senior special agent, and my manager. And that meeting was scheduled for 9:30 that day. This was a particularly important meeting for me, as had been indicated that success in this case may lead to me getting a promotion to a senior special agent.
We are requesting permission to add an individual to our witness list. We're approached by a witness who indicated that they had specific information that was contrary to something the defendant testified to. This is a surprise to the Commonwealth. To your knowledge, was there a meeting scheduled between yourself or with Juliet and Mr. Banfield on the morning of February 24th, 2023?
Leading.
Sure.
Sustain the objection.
Did you have any plans for the morning of February 24th, 2023?
I did. I was in Baltimore on an unrelated undercover operation on that morning.
Were you scheduled to meet with Mr. Banfield?
I was not.
And again, I'm sorry, where was Juliet, his other supervisor?
She was out of the country.
Okay, Annie, I do think it's important to mention, we heard John Carroll when he did the cross-examination, he said, you were only there for a few weeks. He was only the supervisor. He was the acting supervisor, and he was only there for a few weeks. And there were other managers, but at the end of the day, he was saying, I would have been the manager this conversation would happen with. He also pointed out Brendan's clothing from that day. We saw in the body footage in jeans and a button-down, sneakers. And he, John Carroll and the prosecution, they were going back and forth with him about the attire. And the prosecution said, how would you dress if you had a big, important meeting? And he made a point to say, not like that. So I thought those were some interesting moments. Obviously, John Carroll did not like that response, but definitely some interesting moments. And I want to go,
that differing response also shows or could hurt, obviously, Brendan's credibility, just as someone taking in that
any sort of question. Right. Somebody asked a question that you actually just mentioned, Annie. They're asking about the death penalty in the Commonwealth. So maybe we should go over it again. You were talking about how there's no death penalty in the Commonwealth.
No, it was abolished by Governor Ralph Northam back in 2021. So if Brendan Banfield is found guilty, convicted, then he would be facing life in prison, but not the death penalty, because in the state of Virginia, it was signed or abolished in 2021 by Governor Ralph Northam.
Yeah. So thank you for your questions. We're still keeping an eye on those and we'll try to answer them. And we will have a legal expert here to answer some of the questions that we are not qualified to answer. And that number to text is 202-895-5599. We will also continue to monitor this chat here as well. A lot of people asking what we think, and we're not going to share our personal opinions here. We are just going to keep presenting you with what we know on this case. But happy to keep reading your comments and trying to answer the questions as we can. Somebody else asked, and I just lost it.
I mean, everyone who has tuned in really are bringing up some solid points to the conversation, speaking to the inconsistencies that we've seen, the evidence being tampered with, and remember the
knife being kicked.
Yes, as first responders are responding to the scene, and we saw it in the body cam footage of the officer saying, whoa, watch your step.
Watch where you're kicking.
But it was only after it was touched, right?
Yeah, but I think it's also important here that we mention, a lot of the items were moved because they were trying to do life-saving measures, right? They don't want to step on a knife while they're trying to do life-saving measures on both Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. Somebody in here, Annie, they asked, they said watching him, he appears to be an actor. And why don't we mention, we did have a body language expert on, and we can put that conversation in the chat. And she talked at length about what her opinion of was both Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez-Magli. So I'll get that in the chat for you all.
We had Janine here, Janine, the behavioral expert, and she weighed in a lot about some of the questions that you guys are, asking and talking about, just his demeanor in the courtroom. I mean, Matthew Torres, who's been in the courtroom since day one, helped us and walked us through some of that, the emotion from his family. But Janine brought up some important or some really interesting things about Brendan and his, wiping away the tears or the hand on the chin. What does that mean? What did she have to share about that?
She shared a lot, right? So I'm actually going to put the whole conversation in the chat. But in her opinion, she believed Brendan was not truthful in some capacity, but in other things she said that seemed like it's truthful, that doesn't. Again, these are her opinions based on her background with language and word expertise. So she analyzes words as well. It does look like maybe there's something happening in the courtroom. Are we able to get some
It's moving.
Yeah. So
it's 10:32.
Right.
I mean, we will take you live inside the courtroom as soon as it gets underway. But right now, I think we were supposed to get underway at 10:30. Is that right? So 2 minutes.
No,
over?
so the jurors were brought back in at 10 a.m. The likelihood of us finding anything out is none at the point unless they come back in. What we're hoping to potentially learn is have they come back to the room at all to ask for anything? Frank Salveda, our legal expert, was saying, if they come in and ask for the transcripts of Juliana's testimony
or even a whiteboard.
Like these are signs that maybe something is happening. But he said the transcripts would be a big point of
contention
or know that they might be here a while. They start asking for full transcripts, they're going to be here a while.
And I think that he was alluding that could show disagreements happening within the jury pool, right?
They're
that
questioning.
Questioning things, trying to go back to things, if they ask for a transcript or even a whiteboard, because that means that they are really thoughtfully trying to dissect what one is thinking, and there is no overall agreement in what could happen.
Yeah, why don't we actually play, if we can, day one testimony from Brendan Banfield. He was out there for 2 days, but let's, if we can, play day one of the testimony.
I call Brendan Banfield. Did you love your wife?
Very much.
Did you want to continue your marriage with your wife?
Yes.
Did you have a relationship with Juliana Perez Magalhaes?
Yes. The relationship started as professional in October of 2021. In August, Juliana and I were home alone. Juliana started texting me while I was complaining about her dating activity. Quite a few screenshots of her dating app. I believe it was Hinge. The people that were in the Hinge app all had similar names to me. Their names were Brendan and Brandon and Brennan. Described people that she was interested in, people that were taller, people that were older, and it appeared to me that she was, along with the photos, the screenshots that she had shown me of people that she had matched with, that she was basically describing me. Scooted her seat closer to mine a couple times.
And so what did you do at that point?
I did not stop her advances. She came with me into my bedroom. She was concerned that I was going to tell Christine and that she was going to be essentially fired and sent back and lose her job, which I indicated that I wasn't going to tell her. Also indicated to her that I had previous affairs, and that really this was just an affair, that I had affairs previously, and that there's nothing that changes in mine and Christine's relationship.
Now, was Christine aware of your affair?
I don't believe she was aware of the affair between me and Juliana.
Was she aware of your previous affairs?
She was aware of at least 2 previous affairs.
Okay, and likewise, were you aware of her affairs?
Yes, I was also aware that she had affairs.
Do you ever create any sort of a plan with Juliana?
No, there was no plan. At this point, our relationship is maybe 6 to 8 weeks old. I think that it's an absurd line of questioning for something that is not serious, that a plan was made to get rid of my wife. That is absolutely crazy.
All right, so that was day one of his testimony. We do have some testimony from him. I don't know, should we talk about it a little bit? I mean, that was a lot. That was day one.
From day one.
Right.
And we saw a lot of fireworks out of that.
Yeah, and he wasn't even talking about the day of Christine and Joseph Ryan's death.
Mhm.
He was just talking about kind of the lead up to it, and talking about Juliana, and I think it was a lot to unpack for people.
It was a lot. I mean, we learned about, according to Brendan, he admitted that there were previous affairs, not just from him, but he said from Christine, and that they had gone to marriage counseling and decided they ultimately love each other. They want to work this out and be together. We learned that they met at school. They were together for 20 years.
But not work out, she didn't know about Juliana. So I think
No.
that's important to mention. They were
No.
working things out according to him, but those
Moving
things
on with
they
the
were,
marriage,
right,
but she had no idea about Juliana,
which
yes.
brings the question of, what were you working out? What other issues were there that you were working out? And then you have this relationship with Juliana. So a lot going on there with his relationship.
We also learned, according to Brendan, how the love affair started with Juliana.
Yeah, that was day two.
He shared that he was in the kitchen one night when Christine and their daughter was out of town, and insinuated that Juliana sort of made the move by talking about her dating life and opening up that, can of worms with him. I mean, that's a pretty intimate thing to be discussing with the person you're working for, you're a live-in nanny, and here you are, the two of you alone in this house, and he's making himself a dinner, and you're upstairs in your room, and you start to text him that you need to talk.
Right.
And he says, I'm not a big texter. Come downstairs if you want to chat.
Yeah.
Right. So here they are in the kitchen, and now talking about her dating profile, the men that are appearing on her screen. And Brendan saying that, as he looked through it, there were men who had similar names to him that kind of looked like him.
Yeah.
And he put two and two together and said, hey, is this me that you're talking about?
Right. It was a really weird thing to listen to, I think, for a lot of people, his facial expression during all of it. But yeah, he was like talking about
a heck of a story.
The strange.
True crime just got darker. Catch the full episode on the link above. Subscribe to At Southern Sin today and hit the notification bell for more live original episodes Wednesdays at 8 p.m.